Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk a little bit about building a used PC, specifically with things like picking out what kind of platform you want, as well as the graphics card. I want to sort of take you through the process that I would use if I was building a used PC, and again, I'm going to be using eBay because it's a website that pretty much everyone has access to. So there are a number of reasons that you may want to build a used PC, or at least use several used components instead of buying brand new ones. And rising RAM and GPU prices right now seem to be the big one, caused by cryptocurrency mining as well as just RAM shortages around the world right now. So there are a number of reasons you may want to actually try this out yourself if you're building a mid-range-ish gaming PC. Now, before we start looking at different components, there are still some components you may want to buy brand new, at least in a lot of cases, and those might be something like a computer case, the power supply. Those are both components of a build that you're probably going to want to carry over from iteration to iteration. So you're probably going to want those to be in good shape already. And a power supply is something you shouldn't really cheap out on. Yes, you can buy one that's sort of on the lower end, but look for reputable brands like Corsair. EVGA makes some good power supplies, Cooler Master. Avoid brands that are extremely cheap and you've never heard of before, because there's a good chance that power supply is not a high quality supply. And another component that you can look for on eBay is hard drives. However, I usually buy those brand new because they are pretty cheap, and I like the peace of mind that comes with having a brand new hard drive. I know something's not wrong with it. I know that it's not running very slowly or have any sort of strange sounds coming from it. So I buy those brand new because you can get a 1 terabyte drive for $40 or $50. But if you're comfortable looking for used hard drives on eBay, then by all means, go ahead. Now, for this build, I don't really have a price point in mind, which is something that you really should have in your own mind going into any build, and you can sort of plot out exactly what money you're spending on which components. But I am trying to avoid high RAM cost associated with DDR4, so it is probably going to be a DDR3 system, likely a 3rd or 4th generation Intel. And for the graphics card, I'm sort of thinking of a 900 series NVIDIA card because they haven't been hit by the cryptocurrency mining craze. So on eBay, their prices aren't quite as inflated as some of the other cards that we're seeing. So let's go ahead and hop over there and see what we can find. Okay, so here we are at eBay, and I am looking for about 4 major components here. That would be the graphics card, the processor, the motherboard, and the system memory. Now, the first thing I'm going to try to find is the CPU, because the CPU is going to drive the motherboard decision here. I already know that I want to go with a DDR3 platform, so the first place I'm going to be looking is in the Haswell family of Intel processors. That'd be the 4000 series. And in this case, I'm going to be looking for i7 processors because I want 4 cores and 8 threads, as opposed to just 4 physical cores and no hyper-threading here. So I'm going to see if I can find an i7 for a good value, and if I can't, then I may step it down to an i5. So it looks like the best deal I've actually found here is the $210 i7 4790. This will offer hyper-threading, so 4 cores and 8 threads. It has been tested, at least according to the seller, and is 100% working, and has that flat cost of $210, which is not bad at all. So if I were going to be building out this platform, I would probably be going with this chip right now. That being said, if you are somebody that is into overclocking a lot and you definitely want that overclocking capability, you can step it up to 4790K. It looks like right now they're going for around the $275 price point. Regardless, for gaming, the 4790 is still going to be a really good chip, and it's going to get the job done in the vast majority of all use cases. Now, for the motherboard of this platform, because our processor doesn't support overclocking, we also don't need a chipset that supports overclocking. So we're going to be going with the H97M here from ASRock, and this seller looks like they have a very good track record. It is seller refurbished, says it's fully tested and confirmed to be in good working order, and it will give us all the features that we do really need here. Now, with shipping, this motherboard is going to cost us right at the $62 price point, which brings our grand total right now to about $272 for the motherboard and the CPU. So now we just have to find some DDR3 RAM. So as we scroll down here, you'll notice that 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM runs about the same cost as 8 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM will be brand new. So you can sort of pick whatever the best value that you see here is. If you're into aesthetics, you may be okay with spending a little bit more money to make your system really look good. Since for this build, I wouldn't really be caring about aesthetics at all, I'm just going to go ahead and pick whatever the cheapest RAM I come across is at the 16 gigabyte variety, and I'm really looking for 1600 megahertz or better. In this case, I think I would be going with this Kingston 16 gigabyte kit. It does have 4 sticks of RAM, so we can populate all 4 of the DIMM slots in our motherboard, and again, hitting that 1600 megahertz mark. RAM speed isn't really gonna be that noticeable in games, so it's not really a big deal that DDR3 is so much slower than DDR4 RAM is. It's part of the price you sort of pay when you decide to go with an older platform like Haswell or other Intel or even older AMD systems. So this will work just great for our system though. And at just under $88 after shipping, this really is a good deal considering new DDR4 RAM prices. So our platform cost right now for the CPU, motherboard, and the RAM comes out to around the $350 price point. In post, I'll probably go ahead and actually add up the figures here so you have a more accurate number in front of you, but let's go ahead and look at GPUs. So at this point in the GPU shortage, it's actually clear that the used market is sort of taking a beating just like the brand new market. We have used GTX 970s here, and a lot of these are being pushed up to the mid 200s or even $300 price point or better. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going even some of the 900 series cards. You may even want to go older if you're trying to put together this system. So one option you may want to look into is the GTX 780 here, and they are available still for around that $200 price point. And the nice thing about the 780 is even though it's going to definitely be a power hog compared to the performance that it's giving you by modern standards, it is still going to be able to play all your modern games at 1080p and do a very good job of doing that, and possibly even playing some of your games at higher resolutions, especially if you're like a 1440p gamer. This card will get you by for several more years. And unlike stepping down to something like a GTX 960 or maybe a 760 or even lower down to like a 660 or 660 Ti, is that the 780 does give you a 3 gigabyte VRAM buffer instead of just that 2 gigabytes, which was largely standard in prior years. So if my math is somewhat accurate, after the GPU, CPU, motherboard, and RAM, we should be at about $540 for the entire platform. And then we still need to add a few things like a power supply, a case, and some sort of storage. And you should be about spending $40-ish per component there. For example, a new 1 terabyte hard drive is going to be about $40 or $50, spending about $40 on a quality power supply that can power the components, and then probably about another $40 for a brand new chassis to house everything. And if you're spending about that price point on those components, your grand total would come out to be about $660 for the entire used system. And this would be a system that can handle 1080p gaming flawlessly, and likely even some 1440p gaming depending on what games it is that you like to play. But of course, this is just one used system being thrown together on eBay. Obviously, I'm not actually purchasing the components because that would require quite a bit of my own money, and I already have systems in-house that I don't need to build this system. But this does give you some idea of how much money you can save by buying some used components and getting a really solid gaming PC versus buying everything brand new, especially when comparable graphics cards on the new market with current generation graphics cards are going to run you much more expensive than under $200. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed right now to find a 3 gigabyte GTX 1060 for under the $300 price point, as well as the RAM savings that we saw earlier by getting 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM instead of just 8 gigabytes of DDR4. And lastly, I do want to point out here that as the market continues to evolve, your results may vary. Right now, I really recommend going with the used market for people that are trying to get into that mid-range price point, but in a few months, that may completely change. So check the date of publication of this video before you run off to eBay and buy all your used components, because if you're watching this in the future, it is very possible that the market has settled itself down and you can buy new components at reasonable prices again. So if I was building a mid-range-ish gaming computer right now and I was going with the used market, that's what I would have come up with. But I am curious about your guys' builds, specifically those of you that do use the used market. Let us know in the comments down below if you've built a used computer or used components in the recent past. What components did you come up with and what price points were you getting? Let us know down below. And as always, if you like this content, give it a like, a share, subscribe, and comment down below. All those things are very helpful to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.